Hello. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. First, I also would like to thank Estonia for the invitation and for the preparations of today's conference. Very good. In some way, we in Norway and Estonia are in the same boat. Norway not being a member of the EU. So sometimes we also can feel ourselves on the outside. Yeah. Okay. I would like to introduce, to start out with an introduction to where we are in Norway. At the moment, there is much concern in Norway that we find ourselves too far into our own petro fog or petro cloud. So, at the moment, it is really important in Norway also to have focus on the basics of government. That is an important challenge for Norway at the moment. Yes. Let me start out with the political environment that we work within in Norway at the moment. Norway's new government has been in place since October last year. As part of simplifying government, they merged the Ministry of Local Government and the Ministry of Government Administration and Reform, creating a new ministry. It's the largest ministry in Norwegian central administration and dubbed as the super ministry by the press. So this is not a self-portrait, it's my new ministry. It's Superman. This merger allows us to see the modernization of the public sector as a whole, including both the local and the central government. This is a fundamentally new approach in Norway. Our new minister has made simplify, modernize, improve his political mantra. But what does this mean? In short, it means removing unnecessary regulations, identifying time-consuming and efficient work methods, and, of course, digitizing public sector services. This is the core of it. But before going further to our National Digital Agenda plan, what should be taken into consideration when we're talking about political priorities and consciousness in Norway related to this? I think most of you remember the terrible terrorist attack in Norway 2 years ago, the 22nd of July. A lot of people in Norway asked how such a terrible action could take place in a country like Norway. Our systems for surveillance and crisis management and incident response was debated in the aftermath. An independent commission was appointed by the government with a mandate to investigate what happened and what lessons might be learned. One of the main conclusions of the commission was the national ability or lack of ability to implement political decisions, transform them into action, walk the talk. It was also concluded that a lack of cooperation between the ministers and agencies was deeply lacking. Because of the focus on implementation, this is not the best time for us to introduce entirely crazy ideas. The focus is on implementation. However, Katarina will later on in our presentation present a couple of crazy ideas, at least seen from a Norwegian perspective. This is the digital agenda for Norway that was debated and adopted by the Parliament in 2013. The new government has stated that they intend to follow through with the main policy actions with some changes in priorities and efforts. They want a stronger emphasis on public sector policies and public sector reforms and ICT management and governance in particular. The digital agenda for Norway covers a range of topics. I'm not going to go through all of the digital agenda here today, but instead I want to elaborate on the issues that we are focusing on at the moment. three things. We are digitizing the public sector, cloud computing, and open data. As I said, in Norway, it's about simplifying, improving, and modernizing the public sector. According to our national digital agenda, these objectives are to be accomplished by the public sector being accessible online and by making digital services the general rule for public sector communication with citizens and businesses. In short, this figure shows how the government will support these objectives. To achieve our goals, all the different public agencies must develop a long range of digital services. Each sector, like health, education, defense, justice, is responsible for solving their own tasks. That includes the ICT and digital services supporting the tasks. The needs of the users is to be at the heart of the development of the public sector. But development is costly. I think that's at least in Norway, at least in other Nordic countries. In order to do this, we must have a common infrastructure that these services can be built on. Important common components currently in use include the registers with information on people, properties, businesses, like the National Population Register, the Norwegian Land Register, and the Central Coordination Register for Legal Entities. And other common solutions, such as Alten, I'll come back to that later on, and the common infrastructure for electronic ID. We are currently introducing a new common infrastructure, a digital mailbox, and a register for citizens' digital contact information in Norway. There are, however, certain challenges associated with such coordination of common solutions. It will therefore be necessary to develop the organization, managing, and financing of the central elements of common ICT structures in Norway, in order to ensure that they will support the general digitization of public services. In 2012, coordination groups were established in Norway and formalized both on the ministry level as well as the agency level. One important was the establishment of a strategic cooperation council for management and coordination of e-government services called SKATE for the director generals of selected public agencies. The participants here are key policy advisors concerning which ICT measures ought to be implemented and how to finance them. They also advise on the future development and on administration of the common components in the central ICT infrastructure. This winter, the government also established a state secretary board overseeing progress in this area. The ministry and the state secretary board will in 2014 work towards a common financing principle for the common ICT components in Norway. There is a need also to adapt our legislation to a digital public service. When the public sector's technology and organization allow for new and more efficient ways to handle public tasks, amendment of relevant legislation should also be considered. I'm happy to say that we have made a lot of progress in this area. A year ago, Parliament approved changes in the Public Administration Act to open up for the principle of digital by default. This change was enforced this winter with a change in the e-government regulation. All public agencies can communicate digitally with citizens unless he or she has expressively reserved themselves from this kind of communication. Businesses are not being granted the right to reserve themselves. A wide range of public functions and services are already digital in Norway. I think Norway is still a front runner as regards provision of digital services to businesses and industry. I would like to mention a few important ones. The Norwegian Tax Administration was one of the first major agencies to successfully digitize services throughout the organization, thereby both improving quality and efficiency. Today they have come a long way, making it possible for our citizens to choose the digital channel as default for all communication with them. For businesses, it recently became mandatory to submit the VAT return electronically. Citizens receive pre-filled tax returns with what we call the silent consent. If you don't have changes, you don't have to return it. Last year was the final year of paper-based taxation cards in Norway. Employers will now obtain the information digitally, making the taxation cards obsolete. Another example, the Norwegian State Educational Loan Fund that handles student loans in Norway has done much of the same. The vast majority of the customers communicate electronically with them today. Today, about 60% of all the applications are handled completely automatically. And processing time, in average, has been reduced by 50%. Also, it's important in a Norwegian context. Their operating costs are reduced by almost 20%. And this is in a period in Norway where there have been very little incentive to cut costs. So this is quite an impressive example in the Norwegian environment. A third example is electronic public records, OEP for short in Norway. It's a joint publishing system which allows government agencies, ministries, and the Prime Minister's office to publish public records online. The aim of the OEP is to make the public sector more open and accessible to members of the public and the media by utilizing today's technology. To my knowledge, this is a rather unique service and something we are proud of. It has been our flagship in the Open Government Partnership. The service is part of the Norwegian government's ambition to enhance democracy and open government. And OEP is founded on the Norwegian Freedom of Information Act. Through this service, users can search for and request to inspect public information and documents. The citizens' right to inspect the government has existed for a long time, but this service ensures everyone the same access to the online records in a user-friendly manner. Since the launch in 2010, more than 3.5 million public records from over 100 government agencies have been published. And more than 300,000 inspection requests have been made. So we think this is quite unique. Electronic prescriptions in the health sector has in large replaced prescriptions on paper, and prescription information is transferred electronically between doctors and pharmacies. All citizens will in a few years be offered their own patient summary, including basic health-related information such as blood types and allergies. The solution is now in a pilot phase. Another initiative in the health sector is that we have launched a national portal for health care services, and the portal offers citizens digital services that will make it easier to face the healthcare sector. The portal will be further developed and will in the future offer a wide range of healthcare-related services, including some I've already mentioned. Also, our common components are worth mentioning. Today, citizens can log on to almost any public electronic services by using only one electronic ID. This is possible because we have established a common technical platform that can be used for all digital services, an ED gateway. From this platform, the citizens can choose between MyID, which is the public sector solution, and 3 market-based solutions. One of these are the bank ID. The bank ID has a high security level and a massive market penetration in Norway, and it allows us to develop more solutions that can handle more sensitive information, like health information. We also have another example called Your Pension. Norway implemented an extremely ambitious pension reform in 2011, making our system sustainable in the long run to avoid getting Norway going bankrupt in 2040, 2050. It is the case, really. This is probably our most important reform in the public sector since the 1960s. Just to give you some numbers, in 2014, we will pay out about 200 billion Norwegian krona in public pensions. This is about 20% of our total state budget. So we have almost 1 million pensioners in Norway, and the number is increasing very fast. To support the implementation of the reform in Norway, we transformed our systems according to a customer-centric strategy. At the heart of this new system is a user-friendly one-stop shop called Your Pension. Norwegians can use it to apply for benefits online just with a couple of clicks. This system was until recently the only one worldwide with an end-to-end process that can gather user information, calculate benefits, complete applications, generate a decision letter, and enable payment transactions just in seconds. And you also get an integrated view of both your public and your private pension benefits. Today, in 2014, almost 60% of all applications for pensions are digital, fully digital. So using the portal might be simple for the users, but its creation was quite complex and costly. The Norwegian, the government invested almost 400 million euro over 4 years to launch the groundbreaking system. And the project required the agency to combine over 290 services and more than 30 application components. So this was a huge job. Yes. I would also like to mention Alten, 10-year anniversary last year. Alten is a web portal for a technical platform for developing public sector services. Alten is directly translated everything in and was originally developed as a common portal for reporting from businesses to public sector. Alten has made Norwegian businesses and industry more efficient and has also made an important contribution to the modernization of the Norwegian public service. 4 out of 5 enterprises now submit their forms electronically via Alten. 90% of the most common business forms are completely electronically. We think that Alten is a Norwegian e-government success and will be an important part of our e-government strategy in the coming years. Platform is also connected directly with most accounting systems in Norway. So the platform itself is not just a tool for sending in accounting forms, it is also a virtual collaboration between the authorities, the accountants, and the businesses. So Alten celebrated its 10th anniversary last fall, and I will now show you a video of Alten.
Vi åpner Alten, slik at næringslivet, IKT-bransjen og de andre offentlige etater kan være med og skape innovasjon for sluttbrukere og næringsliv.
Fremtiden er digital, folk forventer gode og brukervennlige tjenester, og det er dette vi nå muliggjør gjennom Alten.
Totalt sett så har Alten vært en veldig god investering. Og nå er det jo godt over 40 etater som samarbeider om Alten, som er tjenesteeiere i Alten.
Allerede nå så ser vi at Alten har effektivisert mye. Og den typisk norske bedriften, ja det er den lille bedriften. Og de trenger å vite at de kan legge inn informasjon et sted. Så har de gjort det som stiller seg krav til dem. Da kan de bruke ressursene sine på noe annet enn å sitte og rapportere.
Alten har gitt samfunnet en stor fordel, og da er effektiviseringsgevinsten.
Nå skal vi åpne opp Alten sånn at det er flere gode, kreative personer i Norge som får lov til å være med på å bygge Alten videre.
Tjenesteeierne, de som eier tjenestene i det offentlige, kan selv designe sine tjenester ettersom hvordan de har lyst til å presentere dem for sine brukere.
For kommunesektoren er Alten en viktig bidragsyter i å kunne realisere elektroniske tjenester mot innbyggere og næringsliv. Det er veldig positivt at Alten nå åpner for nye muligheter. Vi ser også at mange av sakskompleksene treffer gjerne både innbygger og eller næringsliv i samme forsendelse, så det for oss å gjøre det på en enhetlig måte. Det både forenkler, og vi sikrere på kvaliteten på våre leveranser ut.
Vi fikk direkte informasjon fra næringslivet, ikke bare fiskeeksportørene, men også hesteoppdrettere og slakterier og slike ting, på hvilke utfordringer brukerne der ute så med bruk av Alten som tjeneste. Dette tok Alten virkelig med seg, og har tatt det videre i planer for utvikling. Og det betyr at Alten faktisk veldig markedsorientert og lager løsninger for deg og meg, og for de som bruker det ute i næringen.
De kan hente de kjernekomponentene som finnes, de felleskomponentene som finnes i Alten, og du kan sette det sammen i dine løsninger på en innovativ måte, slik at sluttbrukerne der ute kan få en mye bedre opplevelse. Ta et eksempel på sauebonden. Du har 200 sauer, og så finner du en av dem død. Du kan ta bilde av sauen for å vise hvordan den ser ut. Du kan lese RFID-chipen, du kan bruke geolokasjon, du kan samle deg, sende direkte over meldingsinformasjon av dialogboksen i Alten inn til Mattilsynet. Det går til banken, det går til forsikringsselskapet. Når vedtakene blir gjort, så vil du ikke bare samtidig kunne få en melding der du står og ser på denne sauen som faktisk har blitt drept, så kan du også få se at vi har mottatt og oppgradert husdyrregisteret ditt. Du har fått godkjent at dette er et reelt case, og du får også pengene dine på konto der og da. Det er på en måte det vi ønsker å få til.
Altså, dette er veldig spennende for hele IKT-næringen. Nå byr egentlig Alten på seg selv. Altså, man sier at hvem vil være med å leke med oss, hvem vil være med å spille med oss, hvem vil være med å gjøre oss gode. Og dette ligger store muligheter også for verdiøkende tjenester. Og kanskje mange nye tjenester som vi ikke engang har tenkt på.
Gjennom å designe tjenester hvor brukeren står i fokus, så vil vi kunne designe smartere løsninger som er mer effektive og enkle å bruke.
Vi har alltid sagt at vi skal gjøre det enklere, men nå blir det virkelig enklere.
Så vi ønsker alle hjertelig velkommen til å være med og leke sammen med oss, og sammen skal vi finne de her gode, innovative løsningene.
Yes. So that was the commercials. Yeah. But there is still ground to cover in Norway. Mapping carried out by the Agency for Public Management and E-Government in 2011 showed that 13 out of the 15 most heavily used services were digitalized. But only 30% of the 100 most heavily used governmental services are fully digitized. Last year they did the same mapping, and it showed no progress from 2 years earlier. Not even in the top 15. That said, both services missing, property registration and sick pay, is currently being developed. But the bottom line in Norway is that progress is going too slow. Yes, as you can see out of this slide, for the last 50 years we have had a shift from a completely centralized approach to a decentralized one, emphasizing sector and agency responsibility. This is not all bad. It can spark innovation and pins responsibility to all top leaders in government. At the same time, it proved a challenge and made the e-government services fragmented. The potential in developing advanced and user-friendly services with information flowing seamlessly between them was not realized. So, especially over the last 6 or 7 years, we have made reasonable progress in the governance and coordination matters. We established the Agency for Public Management and E-Government, DIFI, in 2008, one of the most important acts in this policy for increased coordination. Until recently, we had few means to enforce the e-government policies. Now we have a very competent environment that both can develop the common solutions needed and assist us in building good strategies for developing both the management and organization of public sector. Also, we have identified a set of ICT standards which have been made mandatory for central, regional and local authorities. This set of standards is under continuing revision and new standards are being amended each year. Like I've said earlier, we have followed a clear strategy of creating core building blocks and common solutions in the ICT domain. All development of public ICT services is to be based on some common principles of ICT architecture. These principles shall ensure reuse of solutions where appropriate, open interfaces between them, accessibility for the users, and of course, high security. Then I move over for future activities in Norway. Future plans are centered on the principle of a digital first choice or digital as a default. We have to acknowledge in Norway that most services is delivered to citizens and are produced on the local level. It's on the municipality level. Although some municipalities are digital champions, the overall picture is not too bright. Traditionally, there has been a limited coordination between local government and central government in Norway. Local self-rule has been a very high standing in Norway. At the same time, the Norwegian government is now calling for a local government reform, pretty much like you did in Denmark a couple of years ago. There are concerns on how our 430 municipalities, quite many of them with less than 1,000 inhabitants, can deliver services in a way that combines quality and effectiveness. This calls for a whole new approach for coordination. We are currently working closely with the Norwegian Association of Local and Regional Authorities on these issues. As pointed out earlier, we are not satisfied with the current progress in digitizing and digitizing public services. Too many projects fail, and necessary organizational changes are not put into action, preventing us from realizing the gains. I believe this is partly due to a lack of strategic understanding of ICT, both at the ministerial level and also at the lower level. Yes. So, we still have a way to go in conceiving how strategic use of ICT can reshape public service delivery. As a consequence of this, we aim over the next years to develop our leaders through coursing and counseling in this area. Thirdly, we are now establishing further common solutions to support the idea of a digital first choice. EDAG, Electronic Dialogue with Employers, is a joint project between the Norwegian Labour and Welfare Administration, Statistics Norway, and the Norwegian Tax Administration. The aim of EDAG is to coordinate the authorities' requirements concerning the reporting of information relating to income and employment circumstances, so that those with a reporting obligation can fulfill their obligation without difficulty. In short, it is one's only solution with a massive impact. Another important solution is a public message box. The idea of a digital as a default assumes that all written correspondence between the public sector on the one side and the businesses and citizens on the other side. Let me talk a bit more about the digital mailbox. The objective of the government is for all citizens who have not made a reservation against this to receive all mail from the public sector in a secure digital mailbox. In contrast to regular email services, the digital mailbox service will be a secure service. The Agency for Public Management and E-Government issued last year a public tender for digital mailbox providers. In February this year, these contracts were signed with two market actors, Digipost, delivered by the Norwegian Postal Service, and eBox, the Danish success, delivered by a coalition of banks. The solution will be launched now in November with an initial 4 agencies. Citizens choose which mailbox they prefer and can change between them if they want to. Although this is not at all a solution that implies deep integration with public sector application, single sign-in through the ID gateway and deep linking will allows for some interactivity. Businesses, on the other hand, will find their mail in Alten, closely aligned to the services provided there. Then I will also talk a little about our work on cloud computing. What you see here is a headline from a Norwegian ICT news site from a couple of years back. A Norwegian municipality, Narvik, up in the northern part of Norway, had decided to switch to Google Apps. The Norwegian data protection authorities was on the opinion that the cloud service made it impossible for Narvik to fulfill their obligation to make sure that adequate security measures were in place. They demanded that Narvik stopped using Google Apps. At the same time, the municipality of Moss had started using cloud solutions from Microsoft. The municipality of Narvik appealed the decision. Late in 2012, the Data Protection Authority changed the decision, which leads us to another article from Digi, stating that the municipality of Moss is not breaking the law when they migrate the systems to Microsoft. In practice, the Norwegian Data Protection Authority have been given the green light for the use of cloud under some conditions in Norway. But even if this was a year and a half ago, we still have not seen much use of cloud solutions in the Norwegian public sector. Both public and private organizations are still unsure how they can use the cloud within the Norwegian legal framework. But we see that more and more organizations are starting to consider cloud, and there is a clear need for a policy and some guidelines in this area. I'd like to close the topic of public sector cloud computing with another example. This is an article from Uninet. Let me see. Yes. Yes. I think I'll just go over to the open data since the time is running. I mentioned open data as a topic that we are particularly focused on at the moment. This is an area where we have been quite successful. So it seems like a fitting topic to close the digital agenda part of my presentation. We see reuse of public sector information as an important mean to meet overall goals such as efficiency and innovation, stimulating value creation in the private sector, and a more open and democratic society. To encourage government agencies to make their data available, we have used many different approaches. All these activities have given good results. In 2013, the number of available data sets increased from 130 to 1,060. And the number of organizations delivering to the data hotel more than doubled. So I think we are quite successful at the moment when it comes to open data. And perhaps what was the most anticipated, the Norwegian Mapping Authority has released a number of map types and also published a strategy on how to deliver more geodata to the market. We have now performed a socioeconomic study on geodata, published last month, promising economic upsides on making geodata freely available for reuse, balanced by little to no risk at all. I mentioned earlier that our ministry is the result of a big merger. One result of the merger is that the responsibility of the National Mapping Authority also belongs under our ministry. So this means a stronger emphasis on the need to step up this work, even though important challenges still remain. I can just mention pricing, financing models, and so on. So, Nordic Cooperation, cross-border services. As mentioned earlier, the Nordics share some characteristics in terms of maturity and uptake of ICT. The figure at the left is a visual map of the major ICT hubs in Europe as part of the Europe 2020 initiatives. As you can see, sometimes Norway is completely left out. But I would say it gives Sweden a very nice coastline. Okay, but even if it doesn't always look like it, Norway participates in a number of EU projects and initiatives. We believe that more cooperation in the Nordic level within these initiatives will benefit all of the Nordic countries, not just us, as we mostly have common views and interests in these matters. So, we have 10 minutes left. So I have delegated the presentation of our crazy ideas to Katarina de Brisis. So, Katarina, okay, thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. My talk being the only thing keeping you from lunch, I try to keep it short. Now we are coming to the portion of our presentation concerning the crazy ideas that we are challenged to present. As you may know, presenting crazy ideas is not the job of a boring bureaucrat such as myself. It's the job of a politician. So, well, I try to impersonate some, and I will present you with 3 slogans that will be then elaborated in the slides to come. The first one is digital 90-year-old natives. The second slogan is digital society for absolutely everyone. And the third one is fiber to every fjord. You may already anticipate where I'm getting at. And I will be talking also about things that actually are part of our digital agenda for the years to come. And I have maybe, if there is time, 3 or 4 spare crazy ideas just on my own, but we'll see. As you already heard, Jan has said that we now introduce the digital by default principle. That means everyone needs to communicate digitally with the government. And when I say everyone, if we don't get there, then this principle doesn't really have a value. Because as long as you keep 2 channels all the time, you don't really get the returns from this kind of policy. So we figured, well, we have to get there. Get everyone online. And, well, we're not far from there. What you see here is a graphic telling the use of internet by 60-year-olds and 70-year-olds. We are already good on our way, but still we need to get 90-year-olds there. And what we are doing, actually we are asking the seniors, as we call them, to do the job themselves. We are cooperating with non-government organizations, like in Norway it's called SeniorNet, I believe it's something like that in Sweden as well. And they organize all over the country seniors to teach themselves the internet and the use of digital services. And they do it by themselves. That means younger seniors teach older seniors and so forth. And also, of course, we have a number of other initiatives throughout the government to increase the digital competences of the whole of the population, but also, as we know, as the seniors are the largest group that is not digital, we will concentrate our efforts there and we will step them up. We want them actually to be there. And we know that a number of them is already there, as digital banking is a very, very popular application in Norway, and very many seniors are there. So then the second slogan, digital society for absolutely everyone. And that's a, well, maybe crazy idea, maybe not, but we mean it actually. And that by that, to achieve that, we have introduced a legislation on universal design of ICT solutions. And I say universal design, not accessibility, because accessibility of web pages is a subset of what we cover here. So we have a regulation that has been passed in June last year. It comes into force this 1st of July, and it has a broad scope. It applies to all ICT solutions that are intended for the use by general public, and those are the solutions that support the ordinary functions and are the main way of communicating with users of an enterprise. And that regulation applies both to the public and private entities. And that's maybe where Norway is a bit crazy, because we are not only ordering government to do that, we actually order all enterprises to go there. And that, of course, generates debate. We have had some debate last few weeks in Norway. One newspaper says, the government wants to force us all to get new web pages. It's not exactly what we actually want them to do. We want them to do this if they have this kind of prerequisites, as I was mentioning. So if you are a little, let's say, local association and you communicate with like 20 people, you are not forced to do that. But if you are an enterprise selling digital services to a large population, then you have to do that. And there is a rationale behind that, because we believe that actually those enterprises that go there, they will increase their revenue. They will get more digital clients. And the people who want to buy services on the internet, if they're blind or disabled in other way, they will be able to do so. And that we believe is a big step. It's not only for people who are really disabled, but we have a statistic in Norway telling that 15 to 20% of population have some kind of cognitive or other disability. It may be just that you cannot read small print, like myself, but it may be other kind of things. And it's not only web pages, it's also automators and other kind of devices that are being placed in the public space to communicate digitally. So they are to be universally designed. And then I have to speed up, lunch is coming. Broadband for everyone, that sounds boring. That we have been telling that in many years already. And well, our government that is now in place actually said when they came into power, the government will ensure access to high-speed broadband throughout the country with a target of 100 megabits per sec to everyone. Well, we already have over 50% of population having access to this kind of speeds. So is this really crazy? Well, maybe not. If your country looks like this, then you just, go on, roll out that fiber, and then you are there in a couple of years. But maybe if your country is looking like this, it becomes a little bit more difficult. So we think that rolling out broadband when you have quite a simple geography is okay, but rolling out broadband in a country like that, with this capacity, with the fiber and the real capacity of 100 megabits, I'm not talking about up and down and so on, or like this. This is actually a place called Gudvangen, which is on the main communication route between Oslo and Bergen. So that will give you an impression of the challenges we have in Norwegian geography to actually provide this kind of capacity to absolutely everyone. Well, I'm showing off now, I'm showing off our beautiful country. This is Lysefjorden with the rock called the preacher's chair. And I may assure you that at the end of that fjord, there are people living. So they would like to have broadband with 100 megabits per sec, too. So that will present our crazy ideas, or not so crazy ideas, to realize in the coming years as a part of our national digital agenda. On the closing note, I may mention a few ideas that can float in the air, and now they are completely detached from the Norwegian government, just to say that. One is that Norway is also a country where we have a chilly climate, cold fjords, and very green power. So we could be a host to green data factories. We already are, actually. There are green data factories in Norway, and we are able and looking to host more. Then we have the digital competences were mentioned, and actually to realize all the tasks we have ahead in eGov that Jan had been talking about, we need people with ICT competences. And that is actually a big challenge. We are we have done a survey that tells us we will have a big gap between demand and supply in that area in a few years. What shall we do? Well, we should get the kids coding like they do in Estonia. And we are actually doing that, also cooperating with non-governmental people organized. The kids are coding evenings and throughout the country. So we already have a movement going on, but we probably will have to do more. Somewhere you have to start and prepare the next generation of ICT professionals. And my dream is all kids have been into it. That means virtually all, not just wishing that. And the last, that was the thing you introduced me with, invisible government at your tablet. And that's actually a controversial issue, as Magnus was telling. If the government gets too invisible, then, well, we may be too detached. But it depends on the area of the government. Many young people today in Norway at least say, okay, don't bother me with the government as long as they process the thing I need to process, and otherwise, well, I'll do something else. Play something on the internet or do something else. But, and what we also need, if we plan for the future services, they have to be there where the young people are today. And they are on tablets, at least today. And they will not be on PCs, and they will not fill forms that are very long. They will need something that is quick, and it's with them at all times and works at all times from a cloud. So that's my last virtual idea. Thank you.
Thank you. Don't leave yet. So that was Norway. And I should say this, that, well, that was actually way more than 3 crazy ideas. So very good job, very good job. Who wants to ask something? Anything from the Norwegian experience, the plans and the ideas? I won't let you have lunch before that. Yes. And actually, I'm introducing Lithuania now. Can we get the mic there?
Hello, I am Brisis from Lithuania. And I was curious that there was nothing about e-voting in Norway. I hope that you weren't told by organizers not to speak about it, because they will do. So maybe you can give us a short update on the e-voting system in Norway. Thank you.
I may say a few words about that. We have had trials of e-voting in last elections and in several municipalities, and we have technical solutions that are supporting e-voting. But rolling out e-voting is a political decision, and in Norway we still have some political discussions going on whether to roll out e-voting in full measure. So it doesn't really depend on getting appropriate digital solutions, but it depends on the political will to do so. that is, I think, the shortcoming at that stage.
Right, but I think it's the question of political will with all the other sort of crazy ideas as well. That's always like that, right?
Yeah.
So, some more questions. At least one. Yes.
Ready for lunch.
Thank you. My name is Guus Bronkers. I'm from the Dutch government. You mentioned some security issues during your presentation. And in the Netherlands, we see more and more security breaches and cyber attacks and so on. Now, if you go to digital by default, are you planning to have a backup some way or another?
My comment on that, well, we need secure solutions. And if you remember the slide Jan had, at the bottom of it, secure, robust platform for all digital services. But our approach to digital security is risk-based. So what we actually are working on, we have recently established a new section in our directorate, DIFI, to coordinate information security work in the government. And they will focus very hard now on risk assessment methodologies in every agency, so that rolling out of any digital service will be firmly based on risk assessment that will tell you which kind of security level you need for a particular service. So we are not mandating one type of security for everything. We are advocating risk assessment-based security solutions. We have various security levels at our ID gateway, and we have several security solutions in the health sector that support that communication. So the issue is to choose appropriate security level.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? The last question from you. If not, then I won't let Jan get off without saying something. So what I want to ask you is that you actually presented, I mean, first of all, I should say that, you talked about some crazy stuff yourself, the work you do with the pensions and the applications and that systems. Okay. But something that sort of always strikes us is the question of cost in Estonia. And you mentioned 400 million euros, if I'm correct.
Yeah.
Let me tell you first, let's say, why I'm going to ask my question. So that would be 4 times the IT development budget of our next 7 years.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So my question is this. So what really makes it so costly? And I'm very honestly and sort of simple asking this. So what's the complication of why spend that much?
Oh yeah, that's a very good question. I think you can explain it in one way to the market situation in Norway and the level of salaries and so on. But also you have to remember this is market-based solutions. So I would say that if a market entrepreneur see that this is a very important reform for the Norwegian public to implement, we have a very difficult negotiation situation seen from the Norwegian government. And they know we have a lot of money in the backhand. But when it comes to the pension solution, I think most comments from outside are mainly this. You have a pretty damn good system. You have a Ferrari or something, but it's also very costly. Yeah. So I think that's seen from the outside. It's I think that's sums us up. But I would also like to say that I didn't mention that, but we have a system that go through large investments in the ICT at the moment. So we have an own a quality scheme. So have been introduced for a couple of years ago. So hopefully it will get better and more effective. But I think it's what I said initially. Are we in our petro sky in Norway, or are we not? So what you're talking about, it's a lot of focus on effectiveness at the moment in Norway. So hopefully we will be more effective in the future.
But I'll tell you one thing. So given your reply, I think you will be a very hot target for all the Estonian IT companies in the crowd during the lunch, who can do it for a much better job, right?
Yeah,
cheaper. All right. Thank you to Norway.